There will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Increasing the block size to 32 megabytes right now. What would be the top 5 arguments that would get hurled against me?
That's a good one.
There are a few that the big blockers got right.
Ching, like all these coins splash into the wallets of all the winners. I love that.
There's a new threat out there. It's crypto.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, this is episode number 108, Emergent Coding, Chips and COPA, featuring Minisatoshi. Today is Sunday, the 18th of February, 2024. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing. And before we get into the show, we're running a new Flipstarter, flipstarter.bitcoincashpodcast.com. Go check it out. We'll talk a bit more about that at the end. Right. Our guest today is Alex, aka Minisatoshi, who is a Bitcoin Cash community contributor and BCH live stream operator. He's done some of the streams with me for the upgrade days and things like that. I asked him before the show how he wanted to be introduced because he sort of does a bit of everything and also nothing quite defined in particular. And he said, no, it's all good. A BCH community contributor. So welcome to the show, man. How you doing? How'd you get into Bitcoin?
Appreciate it, man. Good to finally be on. I'll try and keep it short because I tend to ramble sometimes. Lauren knows with me on Twitter. Yes, I first got introduced to Bitcoin actually in 2009, 2010 when my father gave me a Financial Times article talking about Bitcoin. I was very young at the time, and I did not pay it as much mind. I was playing with technology, but I was like, oh, cool. And I moved on, went back to my Minecraft. It was really in 2013 that I started to pick up on it a bit and start paying attention. 2015, I started getting into GPU mining, not so much for BTC, but for others. By 2017, I had a pretty large farm. I kind of maxed out the electrical capacity of a home. But at the same time, since 2015 onward, I was starting to use Bitcoin for what it was meant for, peer-to-peer electronic cash. I paid a couple people in it. I bought a few things in it, not so much, but a little bit here and there. And just fast forward a little bit, in 2017, I was very much looking forward to the SegWit 2x upgrade. Not so much the SegWit part, but the 2x, I was like, this is needed. We need it now. We need it yesterday, a year ago. And I knew about Bitcoin XT. I didn't pay it as much mind as I probably should have at the time. And I heard about Bitcoin Cash. Granted, I didn't hear much good because of the massive censorship and everything else that I've been fed. I was on the r/Bitcoin subreddit. I didn't see so much of it, but I heard the few arguments and I had nothing against it. But I thought it might go the way of Bitcoin XT. So a week before the fork, I was still of the mindset, it's like, I'll probably keep it, but I might swap some of my new BCH for BTC. Well, a week after the fork, around then, shortly thereafter, I swapped all my BTC for BCH. Probably not for the betterment of total net worth, but that's what I did. And very quickly thereafter, I was working with what was the Bitcoin Cash Fund, transformed to Bitcoin Cash Association, to Bitcoin Cashers, working with a bunch of people in the community, setting up local meetups, setting up what is it called, scavenger hunts and otherwise. I did a lot. Every time I go to a restaurant, besides tipping normally, I'd always carry around my gift.bitcoin.com paper wallets with $1, $2, $5, $10 on them. Always put them inside the receipts. Shockingly, about 80% of people actually redeem them, which was crazy to me. Never expected that. And yeah, I've been involved ever since. It was really the 2017 fork that opened my eyes to how much I did not see in the past, and it's just like this really is the future, and this is what we need to fight for. So that's the very brief history without rambling too much.
Yeah. So do you have any reflections then, having been involved, particularly over that period, as to the BSV split and the eCash split? Obviously, were the two sort of major phases before we came into this current period more of stability. Do you have any reflections on any of that?
The BSV one was probably the most unfortunate. There's a lot of, I'm not a big fan of that community, but they've been generally friendly to me when I would engage. But at the time, it was just so vicious an attack where CSW said he's going to destroy BCH. And fortunately, we had a lot of miners come to the support to protect the BCH chain. And I follow that closely. But that was probably the most disheartening of it, because it was so soon after the BTC fork that I was like, man, guys, what are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. We're hurting our chances at actually becoming this reserve currency. But at the same time, it kind of gave us a fresh start. And same with the eCash split. The one thing the BSVers were somewhat right about was about what was going to happen with what ended up being eCash. And that's the one point I can agree with them on, is that they saw what not all of us did. Certainly not what I did. I never expected a dev tax to be put into place. A minor tax. Now 32%. It's ludicrous. And people defending it's a whole nother discussion. But at the same time, it kind of cleaned up the community. We got rid of some of the psychopaths. Sorry, not sorry. And now I think we have a much clearer path than we ever did before, which is the upside to all of this.
Yeah, and what about sort of SmartBCH? Were you super involved in that, or you weren't so bullish on that?
Yeah, I have very strong thoughts on. I thought it was very cool, but I put barely anything into it. At most, I spent a little bit on a couple LNS domains, and that was it. Because I was like, we don't have a trustless bridge yet. I'm waiting for ShardGate. I'm waiting for ShardGate. I'm waiting for ShardGate. I will not trust a custodian. And unfortunately, and I thought CoinFlex was good at the time. I never thought they'd do what they did, but I was never going to. I feel a lot of the community put the cart before the horse and went against everything that they preached for so long in going for a system that requires trust rather than being trustless. And that's unfortunately what screwed over a lot of people. So I thought it was phenomenal technology. I thought it was great that we're doing this. Easy to port over EVM applications, and we saw some of it happen. But again, cart before the horse, and if you open up your opportunity to get screwed, you will get screwed. So I didn't spend too much time or money in that, but it was very unfortunate, to say the least. We've just had one after another of getting cut down, but we're still here, which is probably the most encouraging thing of all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about today? Where are you at today in the BCH ecosystem? What are you either working on or sort of most excited about and looking forward to for 2024?
Cash tokens are very exciting. I have a bunch, probably too many random NFTs and all these different projects, mainly because I don't care about them so much. I care more just to support the community. So that's why I bought too many, minted too many. But, most of my time these days is I contribute small amounts on flip starters here and there. But I'm working with a few different builders in the community and privately funding their endeavors. If they need to take flights somewhere, if they have hotel stays, if they have some tech development, I try my best to fund what I reasonably can. Because personally, I don't have the time to spend as much as I did in the past and working 100, 120 hour weeks. Not fun, but at least with it, I'm working on my company is back. I work in the financial services space. My company is backed now, my ideas and what I'm doing. They understand, my knowledge in the space. And so, though I can't disclose anything at this moment, when certain deals might close, I could talk more about them. But I'm working with some very large companies in the crypto space that do have friendly, ties to the BCH community as well, or the BCH ecosystem. So that's it in a nutshell. So kind of my day job, spending some time on it where I can, funding where I can, more privately though. And then, yeah, I mean, I can't wait for this conference in Slovenia and also in Argentina. I'm so hyped up. I was sad we didn't get one last year, but now we got 2 this year, which is about as the most I could probably attend in a year reasonably. And I'm so hyped. I can't wait to attend. I know you're going to be there. I hope everyone watching this is at least considering going.
Yes. So speaking of that, we've got an announcement on the Bliss conference, which is obviously coming up in Slovenia, the 14th and 15th of May. So that's 86 days away. So the countdown is on, but there's still time to go on tapswap.cash and get yourself a ticket, line yourself up with hotels and flights and everything, and come along. And even better than that, if you want to come along, but you're looking at the finances, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, well, have I got an offer for you? So Jonathan, Ryan, and I, who are organizing the conference, have agreed that we're going to do a giveaway of 2 Jessica NFT tickets worth 0.84 roughly BCH. So you can come to the ticket, you can get a ticket for free. All you have to do is make a promotional video for Bliss. So I made one with the light your matches. I also made the TapSwap tutorial, and we thought, we can work on some more stuff to promote it ourselves, but maybe we need to just crowdsource this. Maybe the community has some amazing ideas. In the past, when we've done the meme competitions with Luke Pryor, we've got some really good results out of that. So for the next month, put your thinking caps on, and you can make any kind of promotional video. You can use AI, you can make it funny. It could be a crypto guide, maybe like, how to use BCH Guru or something, and then how to, trade that at Bliss, or I don't know, whatever, anything related to Bitcoin Cash that in the end is promoting Bliss. Come to Bliss, check out www.bliss.cash. Right? Any kind of video that you think will get attention, can be any length, can be 30 seconds, can be 10 minutes, whatever you want. And if you make a video like that, submit it either on Twitter, on the announcement thread of the competition. You'll see it there on the Bliss page, or you can email it to me, jeremy@bitcoincashpodcast.com, or you can send it to me on Telegram at Bitcoin Cash Podcast. Now, there is a link on the slide, which will be in the description as well too, with the sort of full rules, such as it were. But basically the idea is make a promotional video. Jonathan, Ryan, and I are going to choose the best, either the best one, and we might give them 2 tickets, or maybe if there's 2 really good submissions, we'll give them 1 ticket each, or if there's 2 amazing submissions, we could maybe even give them 2 tickets each. But I think the plan is probably to give away at least 2 tickets. So get thinking and then come along. I'm really looking forward to see what people come up with. And if you already have a ticket, you can obviously still enter and then bring along a friend for free. So maybe look into that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you. So you're gonna be at Bliss, and
yes, sir.
You've been hearing the hype. What's the most exciting part about it that you're keen for?
For me, meeting all the builders in person again. The last conference was wonderful. Met a lot of people for the first time in person, and I'm just excited to do it again. It's great to put real face to the name, rather than being online is great, but seeing people in person is really just a whole nother level. Also, I feel just adds a little bit of that more legitimacy to the project as well, by having these actual conferences and events that people attend, and showcasing people using the currency in day-to-day spending. And so a little impromptu, but I'll give half a BCH to each ticket winner for this as well for additional spending money.
There we go. All right. Wow. Surprise announcement. So the stakes are rising. Not only can you get free tickets, you can also have half of BCH to spend at the conference, which you'll have no problem doing because obviously there's going to be vendors there, and you can also transact with all the people that are in attendance. So yeah. All right. Love it. I love to hear it. There you go. I'm looking forward to those submissions. So get your thinking caps on, and I'll see you at Bliss in May. It's going to be absolutely epic. My favorite thing, meeting everyone is great. I'm not going to say that's not. That's an awesome part of it. My favorite part of the BCH 22 that we did, though, was all the incidental BCH commerce. That was my favorite thing, where you could go to restaurants with people and then suddenly people are paying each other in BCH. I love that. Just little like deals and little like people just transact, that's what humans are about. That's what economics is. And so as we're so used to having to try and explain BCH to a lot of the people that you want to transact with outside of the community. Everyone does so much advocacy work and, hey, man, can I trade you in Bitcoin Cash? You have to give them this huge like pitch, and show them how a wallet works and all that stuff. It's just such a change of pace when you're not only in person, but also like everyone there is just on board with it. And the one or two people that aren't fucking love it because they get shown one time how to use a wallet and then they see it happening around them and they think this is great. And that's just, it proves to me that we can actually do this, that we can make this a world system, right? Because you can see it happen in a small case with 100 people, and then you're just like, there's no reason that this couldn't work everywhere, right? So
no, exactly. That's like when I was there, it's like it's great. If I pay the bill, then the people would just pay me via it's easy. I showed the Prime Minister's son how to spend BCH, and I got him to buy water bottles like for him, and I don't remember his friend's name. I don't remember their names. So I feel bad now. But I showed them how to use BCH because they were just there because their father was there and they didn't really care. But I talked to them for a little while, got them on the BCH.game spin wheel. They won some. I gave away so much money at that too because eventually they ran out of money, so I started funding it. And then they went off. They bought whatever. They actually thought it was cool. It was neat to see that click from something. Oh, it's just something random on the internet. A bunch of nerds use it. To like, oh, this actually works. Even in my office now, I have this little small BCH ecosystem going where if one of us buys lunch, then the others pay back in BCH. They got a little tiny circular economy within there too. So all these, wherever these are, these little things, I think are, you said it exactly. It's so cool to like little by little just expanding it, just like grassroots part. It's great.
Yeah, and that's an experience you'll struggle to get anywhere else. So if you're on the fence or still considering it or whatever, just highly recommended www.bliss.cash and come meet up with us because you'll have a fucking blast, I promise. Okay, we're going to check out the price. So this week, BCH moving up a little bit, at least against fiat. Today, it is $267.94 US. One BTC buys 194.2 BCH, so we are down a little on that ratio, and one ETH buys 10.5 BCH, so also down a little on that ratio. Alex, you were mentioning being in the financial services industry. Do you pay much attention to the markets, and what do you make of the price performance recently and going forward?
So my job is more focused on capital raises, mergers, acquisitions, and stuff like that. So less on the markets themselves, but I've been following closely. I saw when we broke the top 20 again and passed Litecoin for the 10th time, which is why I always tell people is like, we passed Litecoin. Like, we've done it before. Let's calm down a little bit here, guys. We're kind of right there. But no, so the most, I'll get into just a little what I've seen is the BTC ETF launching. It went almost exactly how I suggested it was going to for months. Grayscale liquidated billions of dollars because it was trading under the net asset value, and frankly went a little lower than I thought it would. Whoever said it was going to 10,000, I thought it was ridiculous. But I thought it was like, yeah, it's going to trade down 10+%. It did, and now it's going back up. But what we still see is that the Grayscale Trust, it's BCH Trust, BCH still trades at a massive premium to the asset value. And we just saw the first Ethereum spot ETF applications go to the SEC, I think, last week. And, even though Gary Gensler, he goes back and forth a little bit, he has said in the past that the 4 cryptos that are not securities are BTC, BCH, ETH, and can't even speak, LTC. They've been around for so long. And I'm not a big proponent of ETFs, and frankly, I thought the SEC, including Gensler and some another individual from there, they make great points. It's like, yeah, we're going to allow the BTC ETF because we have to, but doesn't this kind of defeat the purpose of what it was meant for? And I was like, yeah, okay, so these guys at the SEC, I may not like them so much or their opinions on things, but they nailed this dead on the head. They crushed the BTC maxis with just that simple statement. It's like, it should never have needed it. But on the flip side, since it's inevitably happened, my English, God, it's my first language and I still can't speak it. I still see it as a net positive because when, and I think it's a matter of when, not if, the BCH ETF happens. And I'm thinking, I have no insight on this, so that's why I can speak to it. Could be the next 12, 18 months. Considering it's consistently traded at a massive premium to the asset value, that should significantly help the price. And frankly, as much as I don't like the idea of it, price is going to be one of the biggest things that gets people into this ecosystem and gets them to stay. And I'm hoping that we would, even if it's custodial and it's for people's 401ks or whatever, I'm happy because I'll throw some money in my 401k into BCH then. Like, why the heck not? I could do it now on the OTC, but it makes it a little more challenging. So, but once there be an ETF, I would absolutely throw a little bit of my brokerage money into it, which otherwise I couldn't as easily, at least not without the tax benefits. So, short term, I think I've rambled on here a bit. Short term, I think it's great. I'm hoping that we close this gap a little bit more with BTC, though. I would love to reclaim the 1 to 100, and I think there's a good chance of it, but fortunately, no insights. But I mean, Jeremy, do you have? What I'm curious because I hear you talk about it a lot, but not face to face. What do you think on this?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. My sense is always that we're just going to be sliding a bit on the ratio most of the time. Like, I'm just never really that surprised by that because it's just kind of the way it always goes until we get a sudden spike, right? That was the same thing. We're just sliding down to, 250, 247 to 1. And then there was that period where we did episode 85 where it just went back up to under 100 to 1, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see that same thing happening. And I'm quite optimistic because even our ratio is going down, but we're moving up the coin market cap rankings, right? So that goes to show that everything else is also kind of sliding against BTC. So we're not sort of unique in that regard. The problem is if we're just falling off a cliff and the rest of the competition isn't, but that's not really what's happening. And I guess there is more money in BTC at the moment only because, not only because it's sort of the early start of the bull cycle period where traditionally more of the money goes into BTC, but also they had those ETFs and the hype and blah, blah, blah. So I think that kind of accounts for how well they're doing. I don't know that we're going to see any big reversal on the ratio, but I'm fairly bullish for BCH. It's weird because I'm bullish BCH USD, but I'm bearish BTC BCH, but I'm also not that bullish BTC USD. I think I've said, there was maybe a chance we'd underperform the all-time highs and so forth in this cycle. Like, I tend to think in the past, if there'd been an ETF, the euphoria would be insane and it would be straight to all-time highs and the whole world going off about it. That hasn't really happened. I mean, it pumped up a bit, and I guess maybe it takes time for all the money to filter in, but my sense is just the world's moved past BTC a little bit. It's not where the action is in crypto, really, I don't think.
So, I mean, you look at the massive buy volumes, right? I mean, one of the ETFs, I think, if I recall correctly, the BlackRock ETF has now cumulatively purchased about 110,000 BTC. Some massive amount. But yet the price doesn't move all that significantly.
Exactly.
And do you have Saylor buying with MicroStrategy? First, he was accumulating a bunch of debt. And some people like to say, oh, it's cash on the balance sheet. They had basically no cash. They accumulated like $2 billion in debt to buy BTC, and then they went off and they just continue every quarter. They're issuing more shares. They're creating shares out of thin air, diluting the stock in order to buy more BTC. And it seems to have been working as a strategy thus far, MicroStrategy strategy. But at the same time, there's so much buy volume, yet it's not going really astronomically. We're not getting the God candles that Max Kaiser continues to post about every freaking week. And I'm not surprised at all. I think the market's kind of moved past it, and you got people that are getting out of their positions. There's not the hype that people like to say there is. That's moved on to other projects and other industries. But at the same time, all these people buying it, I don't think there's this much. They never be able to realize these gains. Yeah, they might have a paper profit right now, but if they started liquidating any bit of it, we saw what happened with Grayscale. It wasn't even that big a liquidation. It was a couple $1 billion on a couple $100 billion market cap. And it tanked it by 10, 20%. So I'm very curious as to what's going to happen if people decide to start selling out of positions, what'll happen. Because I agree. I don't think there's the hype there once was.
These huge buys, I agree, like what you're saying there is spot on, right? You see all the time, it's like the thing du jour on the BTC side is they're like, look at how much they have those charts, of like, look at these inflows on Coinbase, like 50,000 BTC inflow or outflow or whatever it is. And then, Sailors just bought a new stack of 50,000. Nayib Bukele just bought another 20,000. Whatever, BlackRock bought some, and you're like, yeah, but if these guys are buying up these huge chunks of it, every trade has two parties, right? Somebody must be selling to them. Who is it? Is it just the miners? Are just they've got an OTC deal with the miners? Maybe is it like some other big? It's like the earlier institutional like getting out. These guys are the exit liquidity in some sense for the people that already made their 10x. I don't know. Seems like
we're gonna see an interesting time with the halving though, because the supply is gonna reduce, but the majority of miners will, if prices don't move up more from here, the majority of miners are gonna just be unprofitable again, and I fully expect to see more bankruptcies in the space. And we already had two of the largest miners publicly traded at least go bankrupt and during the last cycle or the last year, I guess. I fully expect that we're going to see a lot more unless the price moves up significantly. And I don't see that happening yet. Maybe it will. Maybe I'm wrong. I do think it's going to move up, but people are saying, oh, we're going to get a God candle 250,000 or $1 million. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's optimistic. I mean, I don't know, man.
Nothing's impossible in crypto.
$1 million, not a chance.
Nothing's impossible in crypto, but it just seems like such hope, especially when it's such like there's not every time in every previous cycle, including even the last two, the run-ups are driven by retail euphoria. That's what happens, and they're killed by on-chain fees. And now we have less retail euphoria and more on-chain fees than ever. So I still can't see past that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the price does go super high, but retail adoption of BTC as a payment system is just dead, and we're going to talk about that. But okay, let's get on with what's actually going on in crypto then. So I've got a slide here called Rising Transactions because for a long period of the show, we used to check in on the on-chain transaction volume on every single show, but I stopped doing it because it was kind of boring and people didn't really like it in the survey. There wasn't really much to say about it. But now things have sort of changed, and I think it's worth highlighting this one time. So over the last about year, the on-chain daily transactions for BCH have gone from about 10 or 15,000 to closer to between 50 and 80,000 per day. And if you zoom in a little bit, I've got a zoomed in view of that over the last couple of months. It's not just like an organic flat increase. It's quite spiky. Some days it's quite high, and then other days it's back into that 15, 20K range. Now, turns out we actually know the reason for that, which is that along with generally adoption of BCH does seem to be growing, right? And more apps and so forth, but that's the minority part of it. The biggest driver of this huge on-chain transactions comes from the Emergent Coding project in Townsville with the Australian guys that are down there. And so they now have moved out of their sort of early testing phase and they're in some kind of closed beta phase. So I asked, Shadow of Harbinger asked Noel, who's in charge of that project, for an update in the Telegram channel. And this is what he said, because we were watching this on-chain transaction volume going up. He said, Shadow of Harbinger, thanks for reaching out for an update. As you know, we permanently booted the components market at the end of November and presently build applications whereby every supplier is paid cash for every component they supply, something not possible with any other cryptocurrency. While the tech has taken the long road to market, we wanted the integrity of building our tech/infrastructure using components. This quarter, we have begun to release the tech to a limited number of developers around the world and plan to grow this number as we approach a public launch, likely in Q2. DM me if you would like to be considered in these early stage releases. So we will discuss the whole thing more with Noel on this show once it is live to get into all the nitty-gritty details of it. But the idea is to have Bitcoin Cash payable for custom-built automated software development. And this project has been like years in the making, like years and years and years in the making. And the rising transaction volume, Noel said they do about 150,000 channel opens or closes. I think 150,000 must be channel opens and maybe another 150,000 closes, which represents more than 50 billion payments per week at the moment. So when we see these on-chain transactions, right, let's say 150,000 transactions in a week, that's not 150,000 payments. It's actually 150,000 channel opens in a kind of BCH version of the Lightning Network, right? A payment channel network between the various things that they're making that process more than 50 billion off-chain payments as well too. So this is an insane volume of economic activity, and this is still at the small scale. So this can potentially be one of the secret weapons that BCH has had in the background, and we might be seeing more of it by Q2. But since it's starting to show up on chain now, I thought I'd already bring it up. Now, I don't know how much you know about this project, Alex, but what I do know is that at BCH 22, you and I were on a table with Noel. We had a really nice dinner there, and we talked a bit about this. So do you have any thoughts on this scenario for us?
Yeah. I've actually been keeping up with him on this. I'm joining in the second wave next week of testing. We'll see if I have enough time to actually fully use it, but I'm gonna at least take a look at the product. I think one of the other things he mentioned, this part I'm more rusty on, is that he mentioned like a scenario, even like I think he mentioned a scenario similar to like a gas station where you open up a channel and it's every fraction of a gallon or liter or whatever is charging to that. So it's charging like in the moment in that channel rather than waiting for the transaction to finish or something like that, which opens up another range of opportunities. So the technology is very cool, but obviously, I mean, unless you've heard more than what you said now, but yeah, that's about all I've heard about it. It seems very cool, but I'm more curious to see what happens when it actually launches and how it's going to be utilized. But I know he said the teams are working or trying to get something like this to work for, I think he said the better part of like 2 decades, and Bitcoin was the technology that allowed them to actually was the technology that actually allowed this to happen. So all in all, I'm very excited for this project. I'm hoping I get some time to actually play around and test it. But yeah, no, I'm just very curious to see where it actually ends up, and what happens. It is such a cool technology. It is so cool. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so the specifics is going to have to wait, I think, basically until they're ready to go public. I've also discussed it with him and, had a bit of a look at it, not in all that great detail, to be honest. And it's kind of a big thing. It's hard to get your head around exactly how it works, even for me as a software developer and obviously, BCH obsessive. So what I'm taking from it really is that they must be getting close to an actual release, because this has been a long time in the works. There's been a lot of, it's coming. But if they are now running it with people actually doing development, and the fact that we're seeing transactions show up on chain, to me, that's just the biggest, because Noel has said to me several times, on this time frame, on that time frame, that, it comes and goes, right? When you're doing a big project, especially in software development, it can always take longer than expected. So I was not that surprised about that. But now that we're starting to see significant volume ramp up on chain, it's not just testing. They wouldn't just be doing that just to try it out, right? There's got to be some real clients and real economic activity starting to happen. So again, listeners to the show, I understand that maybe this is all a bit vague, and you might just have to wait. Like I said, hopefully Q2, but hopefully sometime this year, definitely, we'll do a full episode where we go into all the specifics of that. But if anybody has been looking at the on-chain transactions and wondering like what's going on here, that's kind of what it is. It's the emergent coding firing up, which just goes to show as well. Here I've got a community comment of the week. It comes from Kaylin Kulianu, the BCHN dev, who said, "Did you guys notice we had a 16 megabyte block the other day? The now 50% of max block size default we have for the latest BCHN 27.0.0 seems to be working." So I jumped on that and said, this 16 megabyte block that got mined in the last week had 0.17 BCH in fees, which means that if we had a 20x to 320 megabyte blocks, then we would be, and assuming nothing else changes, that would be 3.4 BCH of fees, which is enough to replace the post-halvening coin reward. So this is just we're starting to get a bit of a sense of what would it take for the chain to be sustainable and economically viable in the long term. Now, Jonathan Silverblood also chimed in on that, and he said, well, a different way of thinking about it, instead of thinking you've got a 20x to 320 megabytes, is to think that we need to 5x over the next 8 years, because then there'll be 2 more halvings, which will bring it down, and then we would be sustainable at that level. So if you think of the problem over an 8-year period, that certainly seems sustainable. Now, of course, that would have to be 5x from that 116 megabyte block, would need to be every block, but that's kind of what we need to be shooting for. And just, you can see the insane difference that even just this emergent coding is making already, not to speak about, other apps that might be developed in that period of time and ongoing traction of the community in the general network effect of people transacting, right? So I take away from this that it is working. Like the BCH community is starting to put up results. We just need to accelerate that, right?
So the other side of it though is that for the 5x thing to until we have an economy that's fully circular on BCH, for that 5x 8-year thing to fully make sense, we'd also need 4x price growth. Actually, probably more because of inflation of regular US dollars. So you'd have inflation adjusted, you need 4x price growth to keep the fiat value the same of the reward overall, which I think is certainly
possible. But hang on, that might not matter as much though in this context, because we're only talking about replacing the block subsidy, which is denominated in BCH. It would be less secure in fiat terms, but you're right. But
100%. Yeah. Sorry, that's a good clarification. In terms of fiat land, though, we need a price, but also 4x is very reasonable for such a small market cap like us. I mean, what's our market cap now? It was on the prior slide, like 5 billion. 5 billion.
Yeah.
5 billion's nothing in the grand scheme of things. I mean, it wasn't that long ago I closed a deal where I moved $400+ million of deposits from just one bank to another. Which is crazy, just how small of numbers these things are in reality in the world of finance. So to move up 4x is not a big thing, and it does not require that much money to be pumped in. It just requires enough people to not sell and enough people to be willing to pay up. And frankly, our market cap was over, if you looked at the Grayscale Trust, if you were to adjust for it, our market cap was over 10 billion already. So no, more than that, right? Because it was 2.5 times the value. So it was like, I don't know, $12+ billion market cap at one point. Like, we could absolutely go up significantly and hold that price too. So my fiat comment is just for the perspective, but at the same time, it's not unreasonable at all.
And what do you make? I also thought this was interesting because Callum was obviously excited about getting a 16 megabyte block. And to me, again, that was probably, from the emergent coding stuff. Yep. But to me, that's just a sign that it was unremarkable, right? There's so much chatter, especially in the BTC community or LTC or elsewhere, where they're like, "Oh, bigger blocks is never going to work. Everything's going to break. It's all going to centralize." Blah 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 blah. But it doesn't. Obviously, that was just a one-off instance. That's different to having 16 megabyte blocks all the time. But it just the network just is so smooth. Nobody even noticed that except for this comment calling it out, right? And to me, I think that's just, once we are doing that kind of traffic regularly, it just destroys the FUD of, big blocks is never going to work, right?
No, 100%. I exactly as you said. I love how unremarkable it was. It's great. It worked. It happened. Great. Let's move on. I mean, the fact that it just happens, we don't have some kind of issue. I don't want to linger on this too much, but when BSV went to their Terra node or something, every application fell out of sync for a month. Electrum servers wouldn't sync. Their biggest apps did not sync. It did not work. So, which is obviously unreasonable amounts of scaling too quickly on a mainnet. But for us to just be able to, 16 megabytes, that's 16x BTC scale right now. No problem. Easy. That's perfect. And that's frankly, we need way more in the future, but for now, I mean, that's great. I mean, 16 megabyte blocks would handle pretty much every. But I mean, what was it? We can handle BTC, ETH, LTC, and all the major caps in 8 megabytes. I think I think it was 16. I think it was 16.
Bitcoin Cash Order said if we were doing 16 megabyte blocks every time, that's the equivalent to the on-chain traffic of all of crypto as it is today.
I mean, there you go, and we did it without a hitch, right? So yeah, this is great. I love how unremarkable it was.
Yeah, it's just a really good thing for us to keep checking in on, and just that sensible scaling. We don't need to be going crazy, but we do need to just keep making progress, and the community is. So yeah, that's it. People's nodes were not dying, services were not going offline. Nobody had to make an announcement. The BCH community has just screwed up their integration with our exchange. Literally nothing. So it just goes to show that it is working. It is working. We just need to drive the traffic because the space is already there. Okay, I wanted to chat with you a bit about chips, the chip process, I don't really want to say infamous, but the known process for adding upgrades to the Bitcoin Cash protocol, or even maybe the community generally, as we're going to see with the ABLA upgrade on the 14th and 15th, also tying into having larger blocks. But you and I, when we were in St. Kitts, right, we started talking about this idea that the upgrades would be on Saturdays instead of, at the moment, it's May the 15th, right? So it changes every year. Some years it's Wednesday, some years it's Friday, some years it's Sunday, right? It just depends on the calendar. It shifts around. But we had this idea, having been the ones who were running the live streams, that we would be able to get more hype and more traction and more media coverage and so forth if we did it on a weekend. Why? Because it's very simple to understand that in general, big concerts, big sports events, big live streams of different things, big concerts, like if you have it on the weekend, people have free time and they can tune in and watch it and be involved. They're not at work. Most of the world is working Monday to Friday. So if you have a big event at midday on Wednesday, which is like what we're going to have kind of this year in the middle of the week, then less people are just going to be available to tune in. And it was our thought that we want to be better about promoting the Bitcoin Cash community to just the average person. So given that the chip process is the standard for how these things are done, we thought we'd have a crack at it. Now, this is quite unique because it's not a technical change, right? There's no code really that needs to be written or written any differently. It's literally just coordinating the community at scale.
Consensus.
So exactly. So I wanted to try this with you because I thought we could learn a lot about, firstly, just firsthand experience of how the process is, and then secondly, to see if we could set a precedent that the community could coordinate on large-scale objectives like this through this same process. It didn't have to involve code changes and this or that, right? So talk to me a little bit about our chip and how, and just to clarify one more thing. I know Emergent Reasons is going to be like, why is Jeremy bringing this up again? This is a terrible idea. Like, what? I'm not bringing this up to say we're starting a big campaign to get this chip through at this, current moment. I just want to talk about the concept of doing it, and then, we can talk about the specifics or actually implementing it at another time. So this is a theoretical discussion. Go on.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you said, we started discussing it back in the last BCH conference. And when we just went around little by little to different members of the community, it seemed to have support, a lot of it actually, because of exactly you said, the very common thing. Major sports days and other events are on weekends typically. I mean, I think it's called Super Bowl Sunday, and that's for a reason. And I mean, particularly look at the restaurants and establishments like Chick-fil-A that they don't work on Sundays. But I understand, so that's where I can understand, okay, well, some of the developers are not happy because, that's a weekend that they want off. Similarly, like Chick-fil-A would give all their employees Sunday off. I don't want to get into the weeds of it about, it's just one weekend a year or whatever, it's better for the overall community or not. But we learned a lot about the chip process. There are certain frustrating parts to it where the backlash was almost immediate. And I think a little bit unwarranted how harsh it was from the beginning. But I also get it. There's, it requires a lot of convincing. Like this algorithmic block size limit, right? Took a long time to come into place. The first discussions of it were, I think, back in 2017 of some idea of this. It was the original BIP at the time. Even things like cash tokens, like very original ideas of this existed for a long time, but they took forever to get through. And, you know, I understand it requires a lot of consensus. It requires, you know, this needs a change. You have to show why it needs a change rather than just changing because it's going to be better. And so, you know, on one hand, while I'm frustrated with not necessarily the result as much as the process, how unclear, for instance, there's guidelines of, oh, this is how a chip process works. And then we're told, oh, that's completely irrelevant. There is no process, but there is a process, but it's not that process. Then where is the process? Oh, it's not documented. So it's that part's frustrating. But at the same time, it's also eye-opening. Is like, okay, well, this is something that is, I don't want to say is a perfect system, but it's probably a better system than not having it, because the last thing we need is a bunch of random people making changes that the majority of the community doesn't agree with. So, well, I mean, personally, I just like to see there be like some semblance of a formal process for this. I get it. There's no central body, so you can't have a perfect guideline, but it'd be helpful to anyone wanting to come in, be it a developer or not, making any kind of proposal for this, for anything, because, and also especially because if people are so quick to attack certain ideas, it's also going to limit who wants to propose them in the first place. And so I understand there's been a lot of attacks to our community. The Bitcoin Cash community is probably the most attacked of any. I mean, look at from all the splits from BSV, XEC, Nexa, whatever, SmartBCH, whatever else. I understand the frustration. A lot of money has been lost. A lot of progress and time has been lost that maybe we'll never get back. But at the same time, if we're so defensive as a community, it also might just stunt our growth even more. And I know people are going to disagree with me on this, but that's my personal 2 cents from it. But either way, it was an eye-opening process, and I'm glad we have something like it rather than nothing at all at the same time. So I'm kind of in the middle on it. There's the good and there's the bad.
Yeah, and I think we did make some notes, and you and I can probably do a better job at some point of compiling up some of that, because I think, like you're saying, is there's sort of a couple of like there's this idea of the chip process, and there's some ideas of how to do it. But you and I, we looked and we found like 1 or 2 articles that had a pretty, breakdown that we could see of, if you want to propose an idea, which we did, then this is how you do it. So we did exactly that. And what it said, first point was start discussing it in the community. So we put that out there. And then like you're saying, there's pros and cons. On one hand, I'm glad that the process is not just easy. I understand it's supposed to be slow and methodical, and you've got to do things step by step, and you have to get large buy-in, and I understand all that. That's good, and that was vindicated, I guess, in our experience so far. But there he is. Alex drops out. That was vindicated, right? So that was good. But on the other hand, I was super disappointed that in some forums, some parts of the community, we got a huge lashback just for proposing the idea. It was not even like, let's discuss the merits of this. I disagree with it on a good or bad basis. Even just the fact that we said, can we talk about having the upgrade on Saturday? And people said, no, we're never changing it. May 15th, it's the default. It's perfect. Don't touch it. Like, that was part of the response. And so what we had to put a lot of effort into, and why sort of some of our momentum slowed down on it, was we had to not only win the battle of convincing people that Saturday would be a better day. And yes, we probably didn't have the best evidence and the best, and we said, that's what we said. We said, we don't have all the evidence. We don't have a solid case here, but we're just floating the idea and trying it. Like you said, it's going to take a while. So we're going to get people receptive to it as we work on a more convincing case, with stats or examples or research or whatever. But we didn't even really get to that phase, because even though we talked to quite a few people who were more in the promotional and marketing side of the community, they said this is no-brainer. This is a slam dunk. Like, we should definitely at least talk about this. But then some people more in the engineering side were like, no, we can't do this. I want to have, my weekend. I don't want to disrupt my weekend. And it's like, well, the 15th can already fall on a Saturday. Nobody
Exactly.
has
And
ever said anything about that until we had brought it up.
Even when we
right?
proposed, okay, what if we did like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? And then we got into like some like Nordic calendar mythology or something as to what's the best weekday to do it. And there's we shouldn't change it. It was like, okay, but you said you don't want it on a weekend, but now you do want it on a weekend sometimes. There's not much. It's just exactly as you said. It's just frustrating when just proposing the idea where we can't even discuss it and I have firsthand evidence, and this if we decide to at one point do a revised chip, I have the evidence of the 2021 live stream I did with Cheapy for the SmartBCH live stream versus the one that we did, the next one. And the live stream count was just astonishingly different. The 2021 one was so much more active because it fell on a weekend. Everyone could show up, and there's still some people like, oh, this is going to be very late my time. I think it was on a Sunday, and it's going to go to like Monday time. So not everyone works for it, but it works for a lot more. But then when we did ours, we still had great engagement. Don't get me wrong, we had great engagement, but the amount of comments that I got, I'm sure that we also discussed, is that it sucks that we can't experience this moment. And I get someone say, oh, it's a technical change, it shouldn't change the network much. But at the same time, we had multiple nodes in the past fall out of consensus. BCHD is still being worked on, and we've lost certain payment services like the pay button and otherwise that were using it. So no, it's not something that's that goes off without a hitch. Right, it's something that we should get excitement behind, and especially, and that's the second point, right? I personally believe, and a lot of promoters or more promotional people think, and even the parts of the community think that it's a great like rallying moment for the community. It's like we just did another successful upgrade. This is another momentous like time for our community and this project. And I can fully understand the other side of the spectrum. So yes, having it on a weekend is not practicable for a lot of people, but it's going to happen anyways. And if we could standardize a day of the week, I think that's worthy of the discussion rather than shut down for even just suggesting we talk about the idea in the first place, which, as you said, is pretty much exactly what happened. Not from everyone, I want to be very clear, but we did get a lot of that feedback, if you'll call it that.
Yeah, and I think, it's like you say as well too, is that this was also partly a little bit experimental, like I said, in that it was a cultural or a conceptual change rather than a technical change, right? So that was where I was also a bit caught off guard, because I thought, on one hand, this should at least be an easier chip than ever, because nobody has to do a big upgrade patch. Nobody needs to bug test it. Nothing like that, right? There's no code that needs to be written. All we do is, instead of just setting the upgrade block, on Wednesday, we just set it on Saturday. Like that's the trivial change, right? So I thought, at least in that sense, it should probably not be controversial. In fact, we're not saving work exactly, because there's more work than doing nothing. But on the other hand, it's very uncontroversial technically. The only controversy could be cultural, but the idea is we need, the community needs to be able to progress and agree on things at a cultural level as well as a technical level. And obviously we've been able to make change, for instance, like with the Jessica NFTs. Who knows where culture comes from? These things organically come up, they catch on, people like it, and they proliferate it, right? And maybe that will have to be forever after the only way that cultural changes can be implemented. But I liked the idea that if this chip process is so good for decentralized governance, it shouldn't become the province of engineers that are just in the weeds every day, and it's just what are the most engineering technical concerns. And I think we got a lot of feedback where people saying, I don't want to work on a Saturday, much aside from the fact that they already could be working on a Saturday if it fell on that day today. But is that to communicate with engineers, and I know I am an engineer, that, yeah, sure, that's not ideal, but it's known well in advance, so you could plan around that. You could have Tuesday and Wednesday off that week, and then have your Saturday. Like, for one weekend a year isn't the end of the world. And also, you've got to think of the holistic benefits. There's a reason that a company is not an engineering department and nothing else. It's because
Like there's a reason there's a reason the Super Bowl's on a Sunday. Those
Yes.
people are working that are running the Super Bowl. They're all working.
Yes.
And they might get the next day off or the day after, however many days it takes to break down all the equipment or whatever else. But yeah, there's a small group of people that are doing a lot of work for a once in a year event. And I should give the context. Again, I just want to indicate, because I'm sure there's going to be some comment about this, but I gave up every weekend of my life. I've had a total of 2 vacation days in the last 2.5 years at my job. I work 120 hours a week. So that's like 16 hours a day, including weekends. I work a lot. I understand what it is to give up a weekend because I don't have any weekends. I don't have a semblance of free time. If I go out with anyone, if I get an email or a call, I have to take it. I don't have really that choice. I can't just ignore it, or I can't put it off till the next work day. I got to do it. And that's not for everyone, and not everyone should have to live like that. That is not the point at all. But, I think it should at least be open for a discussion where it's not only, I understand it's the devs that are going to be doing this, and a point was made, which is a very valid point, that not all the apps always need to be upgraded on the same day, right? I fully get that. And that was a great counterpoint. But at the same, and also for the ones that do, then, who else are you making in other communities? For instance, another great point was like exchanges, like a Coinbase, right? If they have to upgrade their node, okay, that's a great point. Now you're going to force them to do it on a weekend. What issues could that cause? That's a great point. But at the same time, they're already going to have to do it when it falls on a weekend anyways. And they're prepping for this. And it's not like the entire company's off. The technical teams are working around the clock, around the globe. So I don't know. Maybe I've rambled on a bit, but that's just my 2 cents. There's no malice towards anyone on my part. It's just, it'd be nice to, exactly as you said, where it's not just an engineer type thing. It's a whole community consensus. And yes, consensus is never going to be 100%. I mean, even this most recent upgrade doesn't have 100% approval. It's like 99%, 95%. It's enough. And I get it. And you can never make, as Steve Jobs said, you can never make everyone happy all the time, something like that. But you got to sometimes make tough decisions. But that also doesn't mean shutting them down at the same time without hearing them out. And so it's like there's both sides of the coin to this, and it's I don't know. I may have gone on too much, but
it's important
to see more. Yeah.
It's important for us to start this conversation now, I think,
right.
Because the BIP process, the Bitcoin, the BTC process, the historic one, pre-split and everything, that's so heavily dominated by engineers. And it was, and that's fine, because Bitcoin in its early days was more of a technical project. And it always will be, obviously, a technical project. But as time goes on, then after all the splits and everything, the BCH community realized we needed some sort of more social consensus where people can have inputs on things, that it's not just the engineers in some, in Bitcoin core cooking up the dictate for the plebs, right? So we've got that process, and that seems to be working. But then you and I tried to come in and give some input into this process from a non-engineering perspective, and immediately got a ton of lashback as well. The engineers don't want this, right?
Right,
I think,
exactly.
And in the future, maybe somebody will come in, God forbid, but maybe somebody will have a legal point, or I don't know, a marketing. We tried to do a marketing point, or maybe another one. Maybe there'll be a branding point. Maybe everybody say we need to rebrand the green to red or something. I don't know what it's going to be, but the point is, over time, as the community grows and more of the world is reliant on BCH, it's going to come down to more than just the exact protocol bits and bytes, right? So for the whole point of doing this segment, I think it was really just to get the rest of the community thinking about a bit more about the chip process, and for anybody who did have an initial negative reaction to maybe just consider a little bit if they could have been more open-minded to at least the discussion. We're not saying you had to agree with us, but at least not stamp us down for trying to consider a new idea. And then also to think maybe in future, like you said, it sets a bad precedent. If somebody tries to make a proposal and gets immediately like screamed down as like, we can never discuss this, then that doesn't really set the tone that the whole chip process was supposed to create, that it's a decentralized thing and anybody can come in and discuss it, right?
I have some questions.
Yeah,
go on.
Okay, so first off, for both like our audience and you guys, I don't give a damn what day the upgrades fall on. I have no, like, even if I'm working, I'll probably pull up some kind of chat to be involved. But I'm under the impression that most nodes get upgraded in advance, right? Like, I'm pretty sure BCHN already has their version out for Diablo upgrade. So
I'm running it right here.
Yeah. So I am not convinced about people losing their weekends unless there's like a patch, like an emergency patch that needs to go out. But that's what the chipnet's for, right? Like, we should
that's
know
what the
those
6
things
months of
ahead
testing's
time.
for.
No, but people do still need to monitor it, right? Even if the software is, that's just software engineering. And no matter how well tested it is, how ahead of time you've got it and so forth, there's always going to be the big red button moment, or in this case, it's a clock, as it ticks over the line and it's live. And, the node teams are sitting there being like, shit, has it broken? No, it's all good.
A great
And then you
example of
relax.
this is just look at Apple. The Vision Pro, right? Before I even got it on launch day, it went from 1.00 to 1.01 to 1.02. Was the on upgrade day? It was 1.0.2. So I get it. Like, there's gonna be like these last minute changes that sometimes need to happen. Sometimes. They've been testing this thing for fucking like 7 years, however long it's been. They've been working on this project, right? And it still didn't actually work perfectly. I mean, iMessage didn't work for me until I went to the developer beta on it because I had contact key verification turned on, where it does some like encryption check between you and your contact, whatever. And so even at launch day, it wasn't perfect. So I get why it needs to be monitored. But yeah, also the majority of node operators shouldn't experience some mission critical bug that makes it not work. It should be more, I would hope, like stability things, right?
Yeah, okay. So
whereas you get like
it's like if there were an emergency patch that needed to go through, then those emergency patches aren't getting chips.
That's true.
The upgrade should be fully sorted out beforehand.
That's a great point.
Yes, but I mean, and I think bringing up like last minute patches and stuff is kind of beside the point, because I think if we're getting to that, then the process has already failed. People will say, and they'll be right, like, look, we can't disrupt Bitcoin Cash. It needs to be up 100% of the time. It needs to always be reliable. We can't just suddenly be like, oh, sorry, guys, we switched. Not that anybody even could, right? But like Solana, like, it's down for 6 hours. Sorry, guys, like, your payment network is just
even
fucking
BSV.
Wrecked.
Remember to invalidate this block.
Exactly.
So
obviously we can't be getting into that, right?
I have a point on this too, because not that long ago, there was a discussion on the Bitcoin Cash research website about upgrades. I think it was Tom that might have mentioned something about not always like having like required node updates, where you could run the old node and everything would sync just fine. And I made a comment about how, complete theory. Right, and this is coming from a non super Bitcoin engineer, right? It's like, okay, well, what if we decide to have some kind of schedule where once every 2 years it's a hard fork, every 2 years it's a soft fork, and no one liked the fork term, and I got so much, not everyone, but some people just hated the term fork. Don't use the term; it doesn't mean what it means or whatever. Even though there shouldn't be a matter. Who cares about what words used? It just means one doesn't break the implementation, like ABLA. You don't need to upgrade to stay in sync with the chain. You should upgrade, but you're not going to lose. You're not going to fall out of sync if you don't upgrade this time, right? Versus, for instance, the SmartBCH upgrade, right, or the upgrades that came at that time, that you would fall out of sync. or I don't know about cash tokens, maybe cash tokens too, which is what caused like the BCHD node to fall offline, or to fall out of sync and not work, right? And just immediate blowback. Just forgetting anything else, just the word itself is like, guys, come on. It's just the idea. We don't have to get caught up on all the words. We don't have to attack people, say you're attacking the community or some like psyop or whatever else. Let's just have cohesive conversation, guys. Come on. It's not against anyone anywhere. It's just furthering the points. Like, let's just have open discussions. We don't need to be so defensive for everything, especially when someone's been in the community since day one, right? For like you and me, we've been in since the beginning, right? I think we're the furthest people away from trying to destroy this community, right? We're the ones actively promoting, you more than probably most people, right? Is actively promoting this project. And for people to suggest that, going so far, this is almost no one, but there were suggestions that were like infiltrators or attackers to the community. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, nobody was really saying that, I don't think, but it was, overall, I am just, and here's Emergent Reason saying in the chat, like, you don't do an upgrade as a soft fork just in case there are bugs. And I said, look, it's about, the idea is about keeping the node operators, like, if you're just not paying attention, for 6 months, you're not suddenly off the network and whatever.
Right.
But this is just kind of proving the point, which is it's not even about the specifics of the thing. We can always negotiate and discuss about the specifics of the thing. Is this a good idea? Yes or no? The point is just that we can have a discussion in the first place. And I think the community is not doing the best job of upholding that ideal. And I think, hopefully at least we can have some more discussion going forward, and people, because the next person who proposes a chip, I want them to feel like they can float an idea and have people think, let's consider it, rather than no, you can't do that, blah 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 blah. Especially as more and more, as the community grows, this is going to be a bigger and bigger issue. Some guy is going to come in from ETH who's got some idea, which might be good or it might be terrible. But what it is going to be is something that no one's expecting. And if he says something that nobody's expecting or that people's existing mindset can't handle, and then he immediately gets told, no, fuck off, we don't do that here, blah, 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 then we have just killed the golden goose. We've killed the innovators and people being involved.
Listen, I also, just to clarify my position here, I say nothing I say because I'm trying to attack anyone or anything. It's simply because I love this community. I want to see this project succeed, and by keeping quiet on anyone's opinions or mindsets, as long as no one's attacking anyone, right? It's important to keep an open line of communication and to say what one's thoughts are. I only say this because I want the best for everyone, and maybe I'm completely wrong with everything I've said. Maybe there's legitimate reasons why every single point I've made, I don't see them, but is completely incorrect, and I'm fine with that. But I don't want to be I don't think a community should, exactly as you said, just have it immediately attacked. At least be open to the discussion, even if the idea in the end is not going to work, or you don't agree with the idea from day one. At least say that, I don't think this is a good idea for this reason, that reason, rather than, oh, this is terrible, you shouldn't have done this, or it's just a waste of time and space. That's the only thing I'm trying to say here. And I think it's a very valuable lesson that we learned in the chip process, but it's also an important one, as we both said, right? It's important to some extent to have some barrier to this as well, and not like a barrier to entry, but a barrier to finalization, I guess, right? Because you do want consensus. So we've had a lot of splits in the past, which have been caused by, malactors coming in and trying to stir up something. So I get both sides of it, but I think it's important to at least have exactly as you said. What if we have this Ethereum dev that comes in? Or even, God forbid, what if we had someone from the old BTC dev group come in and they have some idea? Maybe we don't like what they were part of in the past, but maybe, just maybe, they have an idea that could actually work, or that could grow into something. Again, like cash tokens. That was an idea the original idea was proposed so many years ago, and it wasn't the initial idea that ended up being cash tokens, but that started the conversation. And as long as we don't kill it, and I get it, cash tokens wasn't killed. Someone's going to make the point that cash tokens and everything else was argued for years and how to get it right because people fought for it. And I completely get it. But at the same time, doesn't mean that we can't maybe do a little bit better as a community.
Exactly. Emergent saying like, look, you have to create a chip and then you have to advocate it over a long time, add a lot of evidence, make sure it's good. We're not saying any, of course, yes, all of that. But there's two big things that we can really improve about this process. The first is that can be made clear ahead of time. You and I tried to make a chip, and like you said, 5 people were like, this is not the right way to do it. And we were like, where is the right way to do it? And they were like, there is no document that specifies the right way to do it. And we're like, well, fucking great, guys. Like, if you can't tell us we're doing it the wrong way and then also say there's no way that explains how to do it, like, that's just nonsense. So firstly, and we're going to hopefully contribute to that by writing up, well, this conversation is already a step forward in that process, but hopefully we can also document some of our experience and help to make things easier for the next person. And then the second thing is just to not react to an idea instantly as this should never be discussed. You might even want to say this is a bad idea, but you can say this is a bad idea, but I'm happy to discuss it with you. That would have been a titanic tone shift from what we experienced, I think. And
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough about that. But I think that was a good discussion that we needed to have. I'm glad we could have you on to talk about that. Question of the week segment is back. I asked on Twitter and Telegram and a couple of other places this week for new questions of the week. We got a lot of good responses, actually. So we've got a big stockpile for the coming episodes. But this week's episode comes from the first one to jump in on it, which was the BCH gurus. And they asked, mirror, mirror on the wall, what's the best cash token project of them all? So obviously a bit of a leading question here coming from the BCH gurus, but it is a valid question, and one I'd really like to get an answer to. There's a significant amount of contenders, actually. You might be surprised. Not only obviously BCH Guru, but it's also Cauldron and TapSwap. You've got the NFT projects, BitCats, Ninjas, the Bliss Jessicas. You've got the meme coins like Leet and Doge Cash. You've got the wallets, Cash and I, Zapit, Electron Cash, Paytaka. You've got tooling like Cash Token Studio or Mainnet. You've got even the nodes themselves. I realized somebody could say the best cash token project was BCHN or was Verde because they had a really good implementation, and without that, you wouldn't have any of them. Cheap Lightning's in the chat saying the best thing is he made a meme token that was just so that's also that's not going to win, but that's also technically a contender. Before I give my thoughts, Alex, do you have firstly what makes the best cash tokens project? Because you'll have to give some sort of criteria, and then why? What do you think?
So there's a wide scale there because best is widely defined by a great many people. For me, whatever in the end ends up being, this is so broad, but whatever ends up being the most useful, the most used, and the most useful and the most used, honestly, project is probably, and at the same time also, whatever gets the most traction and hype, which I guess is the same thing as being used, because it's gonna now, we're so, as much as it pains me to say, we're very much past this peer-to-peer network part where we could just use it in daily commerce and that would be enough. Nowadays, it's not enough. We have Apple Pay, we have all this other crap that just makes it so easy. Why would people use crypto? So now, all right, now we need to find the next game-changing feature, and cash tokens is what's going to get us there, I think. So it's really frankly, one of the projects that excites me so much because of the potential, the possibilities, is prediction markets with BCH Guru. I'm so excited. Once that would open up, where I think reasonably you could probably create a market for anything. That would be incredible. Because there's already sites that, but you have to use KYC and otherwise, where you can predict on who's going to win the next sports game, who's going to win the presidential election in the United States, who's going to whatever else. If you could do that all on chain, no KYC needed, that's an incredible use case. Now it's also a matter of how can we get more people to use it. Maybe I've gone a little ahead of the question here, but what makes the best project? I mean, whatever makes the people most happy, whatever gets the most use. I think, but there's also a wide range of, to some people, one project is going to be more useful than another, and vice versa. So, I mean, that's my long-winded answer there. But
do you have a pick then? Obviously, it is subjective.
Well, obviously the lead token.
Lead token, that's your favorite.
100%.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Could be.
No, I have lead. Of course I have lead. I want it to do well. No, but I think a favorite token. I don't have a favorite token. Furu is great. I used to have the largest liquidity pool until someone decided to dump like 20 BCH into it. 10 BCH one side and the other side is like, oh shit, now there's only so much more I can throw in before I just like price myself out by just diluting it and everyone else is going to withdraw. But Furu is great because that's what works on the prediction markets. But there's a lot of cool projects. I would like to see more. I'd very much like to see more. I'm very curious where Cash Ninjas will go. I'm very happy to see Reapers come back. Reapers is cool. Okay, going back on SmartBCH, the one thing that I spent money on just to support the community with no expectation was the Reapers NFTs because I thought they were cool. I was like, oh, I'm going to support a dev. I'm going to spend some money here. No, not a lot, but a little bit. So it's cool to see them back. But there's a lot of cool projects. And I know that the Cash Ninjas guys have a lot of cool plans for the future. Unfortunately, they're not close to the 5,000 minted, but I think they might be moving forward anyways. But I don't know. There's a lot of really cool projects, be it just fungible tokens or non-fungible tokens. So, there's a lot of cool projects.
I'm not going to let you waffle. You got to pick one. You got to pick one. What's the best?
Fudge. All right. I'm going to give you two, but with different criteria. What I would like
best
the most right now.
There's one thing is the best.
What I like the most right now is Cash Ninjas because they're really fun.
Okay, Cash
But
Ninjas.
what I like the most for the future is Furu.
Okay, don't tell me about some future in the future. The future's not here yet. Cash Ninjas. Okay, that's Alex's answer. My answer is similarly. I want to say that best is obviously subjective and it depends quite a lot on your criteria. So I have to say, when I saw this question, I immediately thought, well, there's a variety of metrics, So I think gurus have done amazing on the visual assets. I've been super impressed. The quality of the NFTs, the videos that they did, the website design, all really slick. So they're crushing it on that. Like Cauldron, I tried out this week a bit more, and technically it's very, very slick as well too. So I'm impressed by that. TapSwap has a special place in my heart because we've used it for the Jessica's NFTs sale as well. So I'm loving that. But honestly, when I saw this question, my first instinct, and I think my answer, even after I considered it, was Cashinize. I have to say, Matthew Hirkins has just done a tremendous job, and the cash tokens ecosystem that we have today is largely just a result of that work. He started with just the most bare bones basic. Alex, you're distracting me so much with your typing, man. Sorry. He made the most bare bones thing to start with, and it's just got better and better. And I've been using Cashinize and a lot of the other like the gurus in their tutorial videos, they show Cashinize. In the TapSwap tutorial video that I did, it's Cashinize. Cashinize is just tying the whole ecosystem together and really making cash tokens usable even to the hardcore advanced users that we're at this stage. So in my opinion, right now, the best cash tokens project, it's Cashinize by Matthew Hirkins. Ray uses Bitcoin Cash, says in the chat, Cash Ninjas and Jessicas are my favorite. So There you go. I'm glad that Jessica
Oh
is getting
shoot!
reps.
Fine. I do have Jessica's my favorite project in this moment because it's necessary to get to the conference. I didn't consider that. I revised my answer for the third time.
Okay. All right, Jet. What's your favorite or the best?
That is really tough. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Jessica ones. That's the most recent one that I've gotten involved with, and I get to use it, so it's a double whammy.
Jessica's
Nice.
Okay, love it.
Although,
there you go.
I will say, like the whole Guru ecosystem is awesome. They're a runner-up for me.
They've definitely delivered on their early promises so far as well, and I'm super excited going forward. So thank you for the question as well too. There you go. Great contribution as well. Active engagement in the ecosystem is another big plus for them. So yeah, sorry you couldn't win, but just truly in my heart, it's Cash and Eyes. Okay. Custodybase is up next. We had some news just, I think yesterday maybe, from Coinbase.
Yeah.
Somebody started calling out Coinbase on Twitter saying, why can't I accept payments, using my Coinbase plugin or whatever they were doing in Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Doge or Litecoin? And they found a part of the Coinbase FAQ that said, what happened to Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Doge, and Litecoin payments? You can still accept Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Doge, and Litecoin payments as long as your customer has a Coinbase.com account. These currencies are no longer supported for payment from self-custody wallets or third-party exchanges. Additionally, your customers will now be able to make a payment with any cryptocurrency in their Coinbase.com and account. So this was not really that widely publicized by Coinbase, who now are having to deal with the PR blowback. But they've got this weird cope where they're like, it's still non-custodial if you pay with an EVM chain, but for the UTXO chains like BCH, BTC, LDC, and Doge, now that's it. You can't pay non-custodially. You have to have an account in their ecosystem. And of course, there's been tons of lashback, not only because everybody who likes those chains is like, you're selling out on the whole values of crypto here to just become the new PayPal, right? It's just a reskinned PayPal at this point, but it's their solution, quote unquote, for making instant, cheap crypto payments. They had those ads that they were running recently, like it's time to update the financial system and crypto is doing it faster and better and slicker. And yet they've just sold out the whole mission. And this is clearly just the next step in regulated bullshit finance that is just going to be the same banks with a different label on them, right? If you can't do non-custodial payments through their payment processor with the most major payment used cryptos, what are we even doing here? So this is just
they are the most used. Let me look at bitpay.com/stats. Those are the 4 top chains used for commerce. You're just saying no. They said Brian Armstrong even had to respond to this because it blew up so much. And I had a lot of respect for him in the past, and a lot of it eroded away today or yesterday. Yes, when he was like, "Yeah, everything's going to be on L2s in the future, but that's how we see it." It's like at one point he's correct about BTC being a failure, but at the same time, it's like, what are you talking about? BCH, LTC, Doge, they all work just fine, and they're used more than BTC together in payments and commerce. But this is not when it started. I noticed this. This started almost a year ago when Coinbase Commerce removed their self-custodial option, because they used to be one of the few that would allow you to, you don't have to connect your Coinbase account to use commerce. You can integrate into Shopify and you can have it go to your own wallets, right, for all these different currencies. And then I started noticing a little less than a year ago, it's like, wait a minute, I can't buy my tongue jerky anymore. I can't buy my body armor anymore. I can't buy whatever else through these Coinbase Commerce things. It kept giving me errors, and I had no idea why. Support had no idea why. And then I eventually got an email back. I pushed enough that Coinbase emailed me back with a whole long explanation about how they killed that feature, and now all all merchants need to create a Coinbase account and need to go everything through custody with KYC. And that was the first one. I was like, shoot, they just destroyed one of the biggest things for adoption, because BitPay sucks. It's great, but it sucks in that for it to be usable to merchants, I think they have to have $1,000 of fiat equivalent before they can withdraw it to their own wallets. You can't do, if you have $100 at BCH, nope, not enough. You can't withdraw it, which doesn't make any sense to me. But then at least BitPay, is widely accepted. You can go to AMC Theater and you can spend it. That's how I spend my BCH. But yeah, this is an attack long coming. And I didn't get confirmation until like 2 weeks ago from support about the self-custody actually being killed, because they never mentioned it anywhere on their site. The self-custody option still shows up on their site, even though they don't offer it. They killed it. And now, yeah, they do this. It's like, screw everyone. We're going to L2s unless if you have a Coinbase account. It's like, it's the most ridiculous thing. I can't imagine how much money they spent on this. They even had their product lead for Coinbase Commerce, Lauren Dowling, that posted a whole thread about why this was important and all the work and time that went into this project to make it all like upgraded, so they can so call it. I'm like, it's a sunk cost now, but like, what even prompted this to like spend all this money to develop an EVM platform for payments that's not even used? I don't know. I'm ranting at this point, but it's just so frustrating. I told her, it's like, you're either lying or you're just delusional. And I really hope they're delusional, because then at least they don't have ill will. But my gosh, this is a very sad and pathetic day for adoption and everything.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to, they're saying like, oh, now you can pay with any coin in your Coinbase.com account, but it's like, so what? I don't give a shit if you can pay with your 10,000 random coins that they've got listed on there in a custodial way. Why is that good for anyone? No, it's just that they're trying to become the next bank, the next crypto custodian, which is just regulated and run by all the same people who run the fucking banks. They'll be the ones who'll just buy out the shares in Coinbase, and the whole P2P cash revolution just dies right there, So I think obviously there was a good lashback, which was good to see, but from this show's point of view, we just really need to highlight to everyone yet, because now it's even worse. God knows how many times have we had to just try and correct the record on the whole BTC thing. They've stolen the whole branding and wrecked it, right? Now you've got Coinbase, who were like the crypto guys that were disrupting it. Now we're going to have to be like, yeah, but they're just part of the traditional financial system, even though they're constantly saying they're the crypto guy. Like, the real crypto people and the fake crypto people were just being flooded with them constantly. And to me, this just reinforced yet again my stance on this show for the longest time, that BCH maximalism is that we're just going to have to do it ourselves. We have to build our own wallets in the BCH community that support BCH and work with BCH stuff, because at the end of the day, anything that is remotely unaligned or multi-coin or blah, 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 sooner or later, they just they get onto some other incentives that aren't making Bitcoin Cash the global reserve currency. So even though it's the hard work that we've got to do ourselves to make our own point of sale solutions, our own merchant networks, which we support ourselves within the community, and our own wallets and our own token ecosystem and everything, even though that's like the harder way to do it in the short run, it's the shortcut in the long run, because all these other like coins like Litecoin or whatever, that so many people are kind of like using these Coinbase services and so forth, then they just get caught up in this, and that's it, you're done. Now they're back to square one. They're either straight into the custodians, or they're going to have to start figuring out something else, whereas we can just dodge all of that if we just have our own peer-to-peer economy. Because if you try and pull this kind of bullet, like with the Bitcoin.com wallet, they've been moving in the wrong direction, so now the community's just built better solutions, right? And if they just if Coinbase is going in the wrong direction, we need to be able to just route around that with our own solutions and just leave the rest of the coins on the Titanic that didn't do that ahead of time,
Yep, 100%. And the sad thing is too, this backlash is gonna remind me a lot about the two Discord changes recently. First changing Clyde, and then changing the font and everything else. Is where nothing's gonna happen. People are gonna rage. Nothing's gonna happen, and the reason is they don't care. Especially because Coinbase now, they don't make any money from this commerce stuff. They frankly make nothing, or very little. Now they're getting all this money from their ETF custodian fees, which are astronomical. And maybe it's fair. So astronomical might not be the right word, but they're going to make so much money from that. They don't care. They're not going to listen to any of us. I'm very glad, as you said, to see the backlash, because it still shows that people care about having non-KYC and non-custodial solutions. But it's very unfortunate what's happening. So I agree with what we need. We need to build everything out ourselves, and whether it be OneCoin or a select multi-coin, I'm still not convinced fully on either part, because there are certain people and certain communities. For instance, Monero has a great community, I think, and I'm very happy with that. Now we have, I think. Do you know the status of the atomic swap? I know that's getting closer.
I don't think it's out. It's not out yet.
But that's a great tool that I think absolutely should exist, because I think there's a lot of similarities between our communities. Granted, I think you can do pretty much everything on BCH you can do on Monero. And yes, Monero is fully private, but I still am not convinced on the full auditability of it if you can't see the entire transaction history easily. Whereas BCH is private with Cash Fusion. You can go to these guys. You can go to, what is it, like the blockchain, like analytic firms. I forgot what it's called, where they actually dive into it. Chain analysis guys. Yep. To see if they can find stuff, and Cash Tokens hides it. I mean, I think Roger even said that Cash recently. Fusion. What did I say?
Cash Tokens.
Oh, Cash Fusion. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Is I think it's more than enough, and I'm really excited that for if we get back to RPA as well, reasonable payment addresses would be the next, and I think the greatest step. So I agree in that I don't think any community has anything over us, but at the same time, there's other communities that have alignment. So I'm in like that gray area there, but regardless, I fully agree that we need to build out our own stuff. Because yeah, exactly.
There's still one issue with all of that, right? And I'm kind of curious about what in the hell has happened at Coinbase, because it seems like they are either having their hand forced, or they're being like proactively conservative when regulations come. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to believe that it's really their hand being forced. But the big issue that I see is, even with all the atomic swaps, I don't think crypto to crypto is a problem. It's the fiat on and off ramps. Yep. And even I've been in this space since late 2016. I now don't have any way, aside from like knowing someone already in the space and being able to transfer through there, or like earning it somehow, or something, some kind of niche I have to put extra work in. There's no way for me to just buy Bitcoin Cash KYC free. And it is significantly harder now for me to use BCH without also doing a whole KYC process. And I'm kind of nervous, like the grips are tightening. And I think our community is really good at being able to respond to these things, but I think the bottleneck will always be the legacy system. And I don't think we have a solution to fiat on and off ramps. Even local Bitcoin, in all of its various forms, have gotten shut down. So what in the hell are we going to do?
I mean, there is the Zappa peer-to-peer, which has seen use, and it has a great variety of things, but at the same time, it's still locked to these old rails, be it PayPal, a bank transfer. God forbid on PayPal in the US, say anything more than $600 automatically reported to the IRS. Or bank transfers, they might just shut you down immediately. God, if you try and do an Amazon like gift card or something, your account gets locked because either they think it's fraud or they don't want you doing it. It's a tricky part. Like for me, it's less of an issue because I will try and exchange from with people that are on other tokens or cryptos or otherwise, and I'll try and not saying I do this. I'm saying theoretically I do this. I could do this, or someone could do this. Is give cash to someone and they send, and then they give you they send you BCH after they do a swap. Someone could do that. But for the mass adoption, yeah, it's going to be an issue, particularly as I see, because most miners typically send immediately most their newly minted coins to exchanges, which then they redeem for cash. And now who has the coins? Exchanges. And how do those coins go anywhere else? Okay, well, they don't go to anyone unless they withdraw. But then, yes, you need KYC. And now you're subjected to their limits and other stuff. So, yeah, Jet, I mean, I completely agree that's a problem. And I'm not sure there is a perfect solution for it. I mean, Jeremy, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I don't know that we're going to have some amazing solution coming up, except to keep pushing on with what we're already doing, which is basically what you need high levels of education within the community, and the BCH community is very good at that on average. So I think we need to maintain that, but also just the fact is it's a P2P revolution, and that just seems like at every step that's how it's got to go. Like, are people going to get captured in these exchanges and so forth? Yes, but if the BCH ecosystem is kicking off so much that the motivation to jump over that wall is high enough, that's kind of what we have to get to that point if it has to operate as a parallel system. And what is the ultimate peer-to-peer exchange solution? It's peer-to-peer networks. It's literally just people, somebody who knows somebody, or somebody, and if they want some BCH, they can talk to you about it directly. And that just kind of is the way Bitcoin has always gone. And even if most people are kind of stuck in the legacy financial system, which now includes Coinbase and Binance or whoever else, then that's not a one-way trip they're taking. As soon as they're into that, then once the legacy financial system starts blowing up, all those problems are going to be hitting them as well too. So if you're not really on the lifeboat, unless you're on the crypto side of the fence, that provides a lot of incentive for people to figure out a way. And like you're saying, it sucks that it's not a simple, easy solution. Like, how do I get into crypto? Go here, sign up, buy some. It's more like, well, you're going to have to take this seriously. You're going to have to get involved in the community. But that might also have a bit of a silver lining, which is that if people do need to be serious about that, then maybe they'll be more active about following what the community is up to, being more involved in the chip process, coming to more events, spreading more education themselves, right?
I think we're at a point where we're getting to a point where people that are like really heavily incentivized and optimistic about the future of a project are going to have to come to these conferences and get as many coins as possible to bring back to their localities. Because when shit hits the fan, those locals are going to be the ones that get the short end of the stick, right? So that, and I was on a walk with my girlfriend earlier, I think it was last week, and I was just thinking, like, at some point there is a price incentive to go to a conference and just get the coins there rather than going through the exchanges. It's just that threshold, but I feel like that threshold's getting lower and lower based off of how low they KYC you, right?
Theoretically, someone could go to these conferences, like the last one, and bring a bunch of cash with them and exchange it there, where there's not the same KYC and regulation. Theoretically, someone could do something like that, and I think that's a great point. Is that the Bitcoin.com like mug that has the Genesis block on it that you just drank from? I have the same one. I love it. I saw it. I had to point it out.
I mean, just to wrap on this topic, I think it's really just we've been saying it the whole time, but it really is the same as it always has been: peer-to-peer electronic cash, and maybe that is the long, slow, hard way to do it, but it's the hard way or it's no way, So I think that's just I don't like. Sometimes people say like, we had localbitcoin.com, or we had this, or we had that. Why doesn't somebody make that? Well, the reason is go and try it yourself and find out. Like, there's a reason that these things always, once they get to a certain scale, they end up getting captured into regulations or shut down or wound up in whatever. And so we kind of got to take that signal from the market. It's not that we're doing it wrong. It's just the wrong way to go about it. So I'm not sitting around praying for something like that to come back. I think we need to instead go the opposite direction and be better about education and convincing new people on board, because it's also a solving problem. Like, it's a virtuous cycle in the sense that I've onboarded people to BCH, and you obviously all have as well too. And every person that you onboard to BCH in a peer-to-peer manner, they get it about 50 times faster than people who don't. Like, somebody who comes into crypto, what's crypto? They go online, they sign up on Coinbase. Like, they have no idea what's going on. But if you have onboarded somebody, then that person starts off understanding this is how it works. Somebody talked to me. Now I can talk to somebody else. I can get them to download a wallet. I can send them the money. Boom. And then if they have any problems, or they can come and talk to me. Just like if I have any problems, I can go and talk to Jeremy and say, Jeremy, what's going on? You know, yada, yada, I'm out of the loop. Like, where do I find more info or whatever? And
like,
that's
I've
kind of the way we do it.
I've experienced a good middle ground with that, because John, Bitcoin Out Loud, and we used to do like every month we do a Bitcoin Cash like virtual meetup for anyone like anywhere, but it was targeted towards the New Jersey and Pennsylvania areas of the states, and we kind of had that middle ground where some people had some exposure but weren't so sure, but it wasn't the same like person to person, like in person, where it was direct, where it was like super easy to explain. But we kind of got in this middle ground that instead of it being like an immediate grasp, it was like after a couple minutes of going through, it's like, oh, this is really cool, doing the first transaction digitally, where everyone would show like their QR code on the screen or something, and that's when it snapped, and it was like, oh, this is really cool. Now I get it. It's not just like meme coin go up or hype coin go up or whatever. It's like, oh, there's actually utility to this. So I was like, yeah, the more we can do this grassroots stuff, I've just like, the better, because that's exactly where people really like understand it and get it. And frankly, just brings me to this last point here. It's like this. I think we have the best chance we've had since probably 2017, 2018 to get traction right now. We have the malactors out of the community. We have another hype cycle going, and hopefully, you know, even though I don't really care too much about the price, I do care somewhat, especially for adoption purposes. But I'm hoping that ETFs and everything else like circumvents, or at least is as a heavier weight than regulation, and we get some pretty good price run-ups this year, because with the momentum, with what we're doing, and since we typically move in big jumps in our price, I think we have probably the best chance we've had since 2017, 2018 to actually make a mark and hold and grow that mark for just global use of BCH. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful this time, even with all this crap that we're facing, even with Coinbase, even with regulation. I'm very hopeful that this cycle that we have a decent shot at making some progress again.
Yeah, and I think the community can set the bar higher for ourselves, and we're doing that in that branding, just the consistently hammering away on it, real P2P cash, because the more we just hone in on that and everybody's just pushing in the same direction, the better it will go, and the more it stands out compared to alternatives, because people slowly kind of get the message while other things fall by the wayside one way or another. Okay, I've got a slide here. Bidenomics. We've got a quick Twitter video. Speaking of opposition and problems along the way, Jet, let's just play this quick 50-second clip here.
The Super Bowl Sunday.
There we go.
If you're anything like me, you like to be surrounded by a snack or two while watching the big game. You know, when buying snacks for the game, you might have noticed one thing. Sports drinks bottles are smaller. A bag of chips has fewer chips. but they're still charging it just as much. And as an ice cream lover, what makes me the most angry is that ice cream cartons have actually shrunk in size, but not in price. I've had enough of what they call shrinkflation. It's a ripoff. Some companies are trying to pull a fast one by shrinking the products little by little and hoping you won't notice. Give me a break. The American public is tired of being played for suckers. I'm calling on companies to put a stop to this. Let's make sure businesses do the right thing now.
Okay.
Here we have it. Just the endless propaganda, right? When the one who's pouring gasoline all throughout the house and lighting the match is like, the house is on fire. Yeah, no shit. You set it on fire. You are constantly churning out more and more fake fucking fiat currency at the Federal Reserve, creating the inflation that everybody is suffering. And what's this propaganda shell game to blame the greedy companies for shrinkflation? Like, obviously, the corporations do have a minor role to play in it, but the fact of the matter is they're just responding to the barrage of printed money that is coming out, devaluing the actual dollars. And they don't want to raise their prices because consumers see that and will blame them, even though it's not really their fault. So, like, I mean, just even the fact that you now have the president of the United States, like, we're getting there one step at a time, right? It's like the classic. There is no inflation. Inflation is transitory. Inflation is here to stay, but it's not really a problem. Inflation is a problem, but it's shrinkflation. It's the evil corporations. Once every excuse and every bit of bullshit is finally, faded out from the public's ability to believe it, they'll finally get to the bottom, which is the government is printing too much money and we need to adopt crypto, right? So I just thought this was like just crazy. But even in the comments to this, like, everybody's just roasting, Biden for how ridiculous this is. So I'm glad to see that finally we're getting there on the inflation narrative. But of course, the excuses and propaganda will continue until fiat's dying breath, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is also the problems like Biden, Trump. They don't have really that much power, and in the end of the day, other people control them all. So they're just puppets doing what they're told to do. I think Trump might be a little less so, but he's also has the other side of him too. I don't like really any politician. That everyone has their own agenda or other people's agendas, and we see this inflation, shrinkflation caused by both the U.S. Net interest expense. So after the interest income on debt we hold from other countries is now greater than our national defense budget of over $700 billion a year. $700 billion a year. I think that's like 15+% of the U.S. tax revenue, maybe 20% of the U.S. tax revenue. And at the rate we're going, we're over 34 trillion in debt. $1 trillion. It's like 130 something percent of the US GDP. At some point, we're going to get to the point where we're printing money just to pay the the interest, at which point that's hyperinflation right there. And and people are like, oh, inflation's going down because it's only 3.1%. Okay, hang on a minute. Firstly, it's above the 2% somewhat arbitrary target that's in place. But at the same time, what about the 15% inflation? That still exists. We're still paying more. At the same time, they're reducing the size of the products and everything else. But they're also doing that, as you said, because it's a response because prices are sticky. Customers don't like to pay more. Except look at the price of milk, the price of eggs, the price of meat, the price of anything. It's gone up 2-4 times in the last 4 years, at least in the States. It's ridiculous. Whether it be Biden or Trump, if he somehow wins the next election, they're both going to blame the other person, even though Trump himself printed basically, or told the Federal Reserve to print $7 trillion in order to pay out to people, and it mostly went to corporations and other stuff anyways, not to the small businesses it was supposed to. And it didn't even fix the problem. The problem was the government got involved, shutting down supply. It wasn't the buy side problem. It was a supply side problem because the government forced them to shut down, and then let's give money to everyone, and that's going to fix the problem. And it's just it's such a load of crap. This propaganda, this messaging, always blaming everyone else. One day it's the corporations, the next day it's your political opponents. No, it's you sitting there right now. The fact that we had a Federal Reserve, and the one person that's kind of spoke out against it, JFK, when he went around the Federal Reserve and issued those silver dollars that weren't going to the Federal Reserve. Shortly thereafter, the CIA, someone had him shot. And to use Putin's analogy, the most recent time, the CIA has no alibi. But I'm not very clear to the government listening in here. I'm not accusing the CIA or any other organization of doing anything. Simply stating a rumor that goes around that is probably totally untrue. But
just like inflation, mate. Just like
exactly. Oh, inflation doesn't exist. It's greedy corporations and people. Transitory. We need $50 minimum wage. At which point, we're gonna have $500 burgers and robots taking the orders.
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
Bullshit propaganda, and it's so infuriating because it's just a tax on everyone except the people that have so much money they don't care. It's very unfortunate.
Do you see people starting to wake up though? Like, I'm so glad that we have the whole history of this podcast. At some point, we're going to be able to do a banger edit of like the propaganda compilation as it just slides with the dates, timestamps as it just slides down year after year after year. Every bit of propaganda. It's always the same propaganda. So it's just the government's printing more money and that's fucking everything up, right? But do you see people responding?
Yeah, no, I think people are. This is here's the problem. I think people are waking up to this stuff, and I think they're realizing it's bigger than just any one political party too. I think people are realizing there's a problem with the system, with inflation and otherwise. But at the same time, what becomes challenging is that there's so much artificial propaganda that is trying to stem both political parties against each other and create such just like hatred for one another that one, it makes them easy to control. And I worry that's going to get them to forget about this inflation thing. It'll be like, oh, who cares about inflation? I need to hate the liberal or I need to hate the conservative. And so I do think people are waking up in this moment, but at the same time, there's so much propaganda going on trying to make both sides hate each other more than ever that it's just I don't know if it's going to stick. I hope people continue to wake up, but I mean, just every day I open any kind of social media, it's especially the last like month. It's been more than ever have I seen both sides trying to trigger the other side with all this. Look at these pedophiles, or look at all this money they're spending and all these like free drugs, and both sides of this thing. And it's just crazy. There's a time that you could have disagreements but still be respectful to one another. But now it's just such
like the chip process.
Hatred. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but you said it, not me. No, but yeah, it's a shame that nowadays it's so hard to just have this discussion with someone you disagree with. Whereas in the past, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than today. I can tell you 10 years ago, I could absolutely have a discussion with the other side of the aisle. Today, it's like it's so difficult. I don't know. I think people are waking up, but I'm hoping that they don't get caught up in the propagandas and lies and hatred that they're trying to stem between all sides of the political and economic and other spectrums.
Yeah, that's it. But the more money they print, the more inflation goes up, and the more people actually finally start listening about crypto. So yeah, you're seeing it more and more and more. It's just going to keep dominating the news and discussions until people finally get to the root of the issue. So it's sad that it's going to take so much pain and so many problems before people get it, but we're chugging forward. We're moving in the right direction.
At the same time, I just want to say one more thing on this. It's why we have to fight CBDCs as hard as we can right now, because if successful, that's going to be I think that's the only way the governments around the globe can say, screw you, inflation doesn't matter. We have full control over your lives because now we know everything you're spending and where, and we can tell you when and where you can and can't spend it. If we don't have that system, governments will lose power as inflation continues. They will lose their power. People will wake up. But that's why we have to fight CBDCs, because I think that's the only way that governments have a chance at fighting back against this movement.
That'll be the solution. You're right. They'll say CBDCs, that will fix inflation. Of course, that will just bring even worse inflation in the long run, but they'll present it as the non-inflationary alternative, until they switch on the money printers of that too at some point. So, yeah, exactly. People just got to be aware and spread the word, because awareness is the best defense. All right. Speaking of people you disagree with, we've had the COPA trial beginning versus our good friend Craig Wright. So there's been 10 days of trial so far, and I believe it can go into April. So there's quite a lot sort of left to come in that regard. Maybe some of it is deliberations and so forth. I don't know. But there's essentially been, from my understanding of the coverage, although it's hard to always get an objective view, there has just been an avalanche of exposed lies, contradictions, forged documents, exactly what we predicted and would have expected. So far, at least, Craig doesn't seem to have pulled any rabbits out of the hat or any last-minute arguments or new evidence. In fact, he submitted several batches of fresh evidence after his third batch was already full of forgeries. He then, in the middle of the trial, submitted a fourth batch of evidence, which the judge allowed, but then that had even more forgeries in it. And he submitted a fifth one. I don't know whether that was allowed or not, but the ongoing, stream of bullshit was being produced. Now, the highlight of this whole falling apart of his story, once again, it seems to have been on day 8, when he was asked to explain what an unsigned integer is, which is a sort of basic computer science concept, and was unable to do it, sort of like asking a mathematician, can you explain multiplication? And they couldn't do it. And then it's like, come on, mate, you're not Satoshi, right? So he has been directly cross-examined by Judge Mellor. There's been so much lies and bullshit. I don't know what the judge was coming in thinking, but I'm sure after 10 days of watching him get destroyed on point after point after point and forgery after forgery after forgery, starting to get a bit sick of it. And I guess we'll see sort of by the end of court what comes of all this. Now, the reaction generally has been that the BTC side have just said this is all forgeries and lies getting exposed. Craig is getting roasted. On the BSV side, who obviously have also been following it quite closely, there's been a spread of opinions. Some people seem to be going deeper into the cope with, no, Craig is winning, he's refuting everything perfectly, etc. Some of them are kind of like, no, don't know how this is going, maybe it's not working out for us. And some of them seem to be kind of like waking up a bit, like, we're getting wrecked, this is not working for us. There's just so many frauds and forgeries, but that certainly has been far from universal in the BSV reaction. There, Kurt Wackett Jr., his reaction in a CoinGeek article we wrote called Here We Go Again, has essentially gave the sentiment of, I just want this to be over. So you're finally seeing that after years and years of harassing everyone with court cases, finally it's like, this is not productive and I'm sick of losing. So maybe some reality is starting to shine on them. But if the court case goes badly in the end result, which is kind of most likely, maybe BSV will just kind of fall apart. Who knows? What's your take on all of this?
So, yeah, I've read transcripts here and there, and I've read both sides of it, and frankly, it's just annoying because all I hear is either BTC maxis or BSV maxis, as you said, and it's annoying both sides. The question I posed to BSVers for a long time, and I'm very curious to see what the outcome of this case is, particularly because of this, that they never give an answer to. I think I've gotten 1 out of the 100 times I've asked an answer to one part of the question, which is if CSW is found not to be Satoshi by the court, do you still support UTXO confiscation? Because you say courts are just, and they'll never answer the question, okay, what courts? How low level of a court? Who's going to compel or pay the miners or compensate the miners for their time to overwrite stuff? What if you have multi-jurisdiction, where a court's in one country but not another, blah, 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 blah. No one has any answers to this. Oh, dude, you're a criminal because you're asking these questions. Like, no, come on, this is ridiculous. Just these are sensible questions that you have to be able to answer. You have to have a plan for. Obviously, they don't. Frankly, the only reason I think they have this is so that in the off chance CSW would somehow get a court to side in favor with him, they can see we got UTXO confiscation on BSV. Now we can implement it on BTC. Now you have to do it. Give me all the BTC Satoshi coins, and that's what he wants. He doesn't care about BSV at all. And I think, frankly, that's what Calvin's probably betting on too. There's no money in BSV. It's in BTC. And I think that's why Calvin's been funding so much. But at a high level, it's like, again, no one answers the question, okay, what happens if he's not Satoshi by the courts? No one's going to give, no one gives the answer. They either stop responding or they call me a criminal for asking such a question. And it's all bullshit. All we've seen from CSW is perjury after perjury. The only cases he basically wins are ones where his opponent doesn't show up. Like, for instance, the Cobra case for Bitcoin.org. I think Cobra said he was sitting in the courtroom, but he didn't de-anonymize himself. And so so that was summary judgment, but all the BSV was like, oh, he won. So I don't know. It's a load of bullshit. I don't really care who. And we've had countless times where CSW has been proven wrong or where he's lied. For instance, where he said, oh, I own these keys, and then someone signed a bunch of the keys he claimed he owned, saying he's a liar and a fraud, blah, 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 blah. Lightning's it's an interesting technology, but it's not there yet, blah, 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 blah. We are all Satoshi, right? That was a great line. It was a great way to show him. And also, recently, I heard that supposedly the Electrum wallet or whatever that CSW used to sign the keys in front of Gavin was supposedly manipulated. And supposedly did that with multiple people. So I'm curious to see if in the end that'll come to light in the trial, or maybe already has. But I frankly, at the end of the day, I think he's a liar, and I think BSV is just a scam. But I will say about Kurt, I do like the guy personally a lot. I've met him in person. He is genuinely a nice guy. But I do think I think there's some ulterior motivations to supporting BSV as well. I think there are some genuine ones, but I think there's also some ulterior motives as well. It's probably just sunk investment too, and he spent a lot of money on technologies and other stuff that I kind of understand his position, but he's not a bad guy overall personally. But yeah, I don't know if he's being the most genuine. Either at the same time. But he did come to a Bitcoin Cash meetup, and he spent BCH at it. When Ryan was with Ryan...
Didn't Ryan say that he didn't? No, Ryan came on the show. He said he didn't have any BCH. Maybe he paid in fiat, I think. But
so for his meal, he paid in fiat. He paid me in BCH for one drink I bought him. So he did pay one thing in BCH. He said he has some BCH, and he sent me BCH. But yeah, for his meal, he paid with credit card, and I laughed at him. I was like, "Dude, what are you doing? This is completely the opposite of what you're supposed to do." His other BSV lackeys or whoever else showed up, they also paid all of it by card. And I was like, "Guys, come on, this is ridiculous. You're at a BCH meetup. At least they showed up, but at the same time, it's like, why are you paying by card, guys?" And now there's a whole thing like HODL locker and whatever else. Oh, lock your coins so you can't use them.
I actually like HODL locker, but anyway, the point is this trial is coming to a bit of a grinding end after it's been so hyped, and there's
I can't wait.
Just for me, the most interesting part has been seeing the BSV community's reaction. You really can't underestimate like cognitive dissonance and COPE, really, because people will find a new way to explain it away or think they're winning when, from everything I can tell, like they're just not. But so then after it's over, the court's like, you're a fraud and we found that and you can't claim to be Satoshi, otherwise the legal system will just wreck you. And that will be the other interesting thing to see in the aftermath of all this, after this much lies and bullshit. Finally, I don't know whether he could go to jail or receive some enormous fine or something, but it really just seems like hopefully it will just be the knockout blow once he's wrecked here,
I mean, this is a civil case, so at most, I think he's going to have to reimburse COPA for their legal costs, which I'm sure are astronomical. Where he's going to get the money from, I'm not sure. But with COPA, all the experts and all the money they're spending, all the organization back, I'm sure they have expensive lawyers. And I'm sure $2,000 an hour is probably the minimum, and the years of preparation. Good luck funding this final payday. But no, like you said, it's like, the more the trial goes on, the more they're like, oh, he's proving himself. It's just such delusion when it's really not that like one-sided in court. That's like, yeah, okay, these guys are coping hard. And yeah, as you said too, some guys are saying, okay, even if he doesn't win, I still support BSV. And then I guess the point, okay, then that's where I always ask
we
my
don't
question,
need him, guys.
It's just such bullshit. Just keep a storyline, guys. Like, it's pathetic. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to fall apart. I think CSW is going to finally be proven to be a fraud, and then it's not going to matter because he's going to sue someone else in some other jurisdiction and he's going to try again.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
All right. Well, we got meme of the week here. This one made me laugh. It's one of my favorite meme formats. Actually, it's the Eric Andre meme where he shoots the guy and then blames somebody else for doing what he himself just did. And it's Eric Andre, CSW, shooting the guy on the couch, also CSW. And then he turns to the camera and says, "Why would everyone I've ever met do this?" And that's just sums it up right there. It's the most self-inflicted wound, but at every point, the frauds and lies and whatever becomes blamed onto someone else. So there you have it. Anyway, glad to see that all coming out in court pretty much as expected, but we'll cover it on the show once there's some kind of result from it all too. Okay, message to the community. What does the BCH community need to hear?
A lot of people, in my opinion, a lot of people are against, or maybe against is not the right word, but aren't super happy or excited about the idea of promotion and media. And even though this might ruffle some feathers, I personally think that having hype, having media attention is probably one of the most important things we can do, because once someone's exposed to BCH, I think it's incredibly sticky because you can do everything on it. But the problem is we don't get much of that initial exposure. We just have all the bad media from all the maxis. And granted, I think we are changing some minds, and I think there is there is some community sentiment shifting. But at the same time, it's like, anytime we're discussing on the forums, I see a lot of people laughing at BTC maxis, and I'm not perfect. I sometimes do myself, but I think being a humble winner over an arrogant one, or whatever that analogy is probably the better way to go. Because we can, not everyone you can do this with. Some people are just assholes. Pardon my language. But if we can be genuine too in our conversations, and I think on Reddit, we're great. The RBTC is fantastic. When someone comes in genuinely asking questions, or even being like, oh, BTC is obviously the market winner, we get great answers. I think we need to translate that more to Twitter and X as well. So it's really just, I think we need more marketing, we need more hype around projects, but at the same time, I think we need to be a little bit more, in order so we don't push people away, just a little bit more open on the Twitter X space, kind of like we are in the RBTC space.
Okay. Yeah, good thoughts. Be gracious. That's the best way to win. All right. We got our supporter appreciation donators. Thank you very much for sending in sats. Thank you to our patrons, Ricky HP and Digital Checo. Thank you to our sponsor, General Protocols. Check out bchbull.com. As I mentioned at the start of the show, we have a Flipstarter running now at flipstarter.bitcoincashpodcast.com. Right now we have 18.79 out of 24 BCH. So we need a few more BCH to get over the line. And if you've been listening to the show for a while and you're really enjoying it, it would be very helpful. It's one of the best things you could do to support the show. Send in some sats. You might have to figure it out a little bit. It's still not the easiest thing in the world, Flipstarter, but get the Electron Cash plugin and do it. You'll get a bit more experience with how the BCH community is funding all this stuff as well. Too. So the contributors who've already earned a slot in the shoutouts there is Majumalu, Marcelo, Shadow of Harbinger, B2C Fork, Adam Back, Emergent Reasons, Imaginary Username, and Yeah Beer. That's it. Great. Great name. Thank you, everybody.
I didn't see this till this morning, so I'm going to contribute right after we're done here.
All right, brilliant. We just need to get those 6 BCH over the line. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Check out the Start Guide FAQ and links at www.bitcoincashpodcast.com. If you're new to the show, listen to episode 85, which will give you the background for what all of this is about. Try out Selene Wallet at selene.cash. Get a ticket for Bliss at www.bliss.cash and work on a promotional video and submit it to us, because you could win free tickets and shout outs for the show. Starting with you, Alex.
Oh, no, I mean, thank you guys very much just you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure talking about this. We had a wide range of topics, man. I mean, this is fun. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I'm really excited to see what the future has in store for us and how much we can all contribute to it. And frankly, this podcast, I think, is probably one of the best ways to do it. I mean, just to go on just a second here, I mean, I've seen how much more in the last year, how much more traction that like each episode has gotten than a year ago. And it's been awesome to see this. So I think the more we can do stuff like this, the better. This is great.
Love it. Jet?
Just everyone that contributed to the Flipstarter so far. I remember, I think it was yesterday I checked on it, and it was like 4 BCH, and now the update is that we're almost completed. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it really makes a huge difference. So I guess I'll do the same. Thank you to everybody who's contributed to this or any of the earlier flip starters. And obviously it's an ongoing thing, you know, every 10 episodes we need some more crypto, and I am slowly increasing it over time as the podcast grows in size, because there's more and more that we need to do to get it out to bigger audiences and to reward all the people involved, and also trying to pick up more and more projects, helping out with Selene and with Bliss and everything like that. So it really makes a huge difference. They say, money doesn't lie. So when people put, stats into the Flipstarter, it tells me that we're on the right track. So thank you very much to everyone who's contributed so far and will in the future. All right, that'll do it. Thanks for listening. Till next time.
So I started realizing that if you can just find strength just a little bit longer, you will have a crew of people following you along the way.
And that is another thing that no one can ever